I love Shelley. I love his poetry. I love his beautiful soul and his fine mind. I love the fact that he hated hypocrisy and he hated injustice, especially against the poor and the downtrodden. And I love the fact that he recognized the genius of John Keats when most of the critics of the day, including Byron, dismissed Keats as an uneducated and ignorant cockney. Shelley was all air. He was an ethereal spirit communing with gods and goddesses and the spirits of the rivers and the trees and the mountains and the divine spirit of the wind. He wrote his famous Ode to the West Wind in Florence in the late October of 1819 during a long walk in the woods along the banks of the Arno, and a huge, fierce storm of wind and rain and hail rose up, and it excited his poetic imagination. The violence and of the transition between autumn and winter seemed to him to act as a revolutionary source that would benefit mankind in the coming peace of a symbolic spring. The physical storm and the metaphysical possibilities excited his poetic imagination, and he went home and this poem poured out of him in a frenzy of inspiration. Ode to the West Wind. O wild west wind, thou breath of autumn's being, thou from whose unseen presence the leaves dead are driven like ghosts from an enchanter fleeing, yellow and black and pale and hectic red, pestilence-stricken multitudes, O thou who chariotest to their dark wintry bed the winged seeds where they lie cold and low, each like a corpse within its grave, until thine azure sister, the spring, shall blow her clarion o'er the dreaming earth and fill, driving sweet buds like flocks to feed in air, with living hues and odors, plain and hill. Wild spirit, which art moving everywhere, destroyer and preserver, hear, oh hear. Thou on whose stream, mid the steep sky's commotion, loose clouds like earth's decaying leaves are shed, shook from the tangled boughs of heaven and ocean, angels of rain and lightning there are spread on the blue surface of thine airy surge, like the bright hair uplifted from the head of some fierce maenad, even from the dim verge of the horizon to the zenith's height, the locks of the approaching storm, thou dirge of the dying year, to which this closing night will be the dome of a vast sepulchre, vaulted with all thy congealed might of vapors, from whose solid atmosphere black rain and fire and hail will burst. Oh, hear, thou who didst waken from his summer dreams the blue Mediterranean, where he lay, lulled by the coil of his crystalline streams, beside a pumice isle in Baiae's Bay, and saw in sleep old palaces and towers quivering within the waves' intenser day, all overgrown with azure moss and flowers so sweet, the sense faints picturing them, thou for whose path the Atlantic's level powers cleave themselves into chasms, while far below the sea blooms and the oozy woods which wear the sapless foliage of the ocean know thy voice and suddenly grow gray with fear and tremble and despoil themselves. Oh, hear. If I were a dead leaf, thou mightest bear, if I were a swift cloud to fly with thee, a wave to pant beneath thy power, and share the impulse of thy strength, only less free than thou, O uncontrollable. If even I were as in my boyhood, and could be the comrade of thy wanderings over heaven, as then, when to outstrip the skyey speed seemed scarce a vision, I would ne'er have striven as thus with thee in prayer of my sore need. Oh, lift me as a wave, a leaf, a cloud. I fall upon the thorns of life. I bleed. A heavy weight of hours has chained and bowed one too like thee, tameless and swift and proud. Make me thy lyre, even as the forest is. What if my leaves are falling like its own? The tumult of thy mighty harmonies will take from both a deep autumnal tone, sweet though in sadness. Be thou, spirit fierce, my spirit. Be thou me, impetuous one. Drive my dead thoughts over the universe like withered leaves to quicken a new birth, and by the incantation of this verse scatter as from an unextinguished hearth ashes and sparks my words among mankind. Be through my lips to unawakened earth the trumpet of a prophecy. O wind, if winter comes, can spring be far behind?